Hey there. I'm here to tell you about a setting that could be killing your gameplay and how it affected me personally. Let's hop into it. So I played on the Eternal Realm with my friend, and we progressed through the campaign. And while I feel like Eternal's perfect for that, because you don't want to constantly have to restart the campaign, right? I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the gameplay. And so I got to about level 72 on a Whirlwind Barbarian, and I was like, okay, that's enough. Back to Tarkov. But then I decided, why not go ahead and try hardcore? And as I mentioned in a previous episode, I'm used to really hardcore games like Rust and Tarkov, and so the idea of losing a week's worth of work wasn't that big of a deal to me. In fact, that's what I enjoy most. So I made a rogue, got him to 17, and died, and realized I didn't care. That's what I wanted to do. This is the kind of gameplay that I enjoyed, personally. The high risk, high reward, adrenaline rush. So I made a new character, and I was more meticulous this time. And I greatly enjoyed myself. Got to level 58, got all the Lilith statues, maxed my renown for the most part. Made it so that when I eventually did die, my next character would get a nice boost. And man, what I didn't see coming was that I would die in such a horrible, horrible way. Check this out. So you can see I'm doing fine. I'm having a good time. I run out of potions here, and I'm dodging around. I don't want to leave the event, but I have my scroll of escape ready just in case I get into a scary situation. I don't have cheat death, but I'm enjoying pushing that limit, which is what I love about hardcore. That feeling of you having to move perfectly. And while I make a few mistakes here and there, I wasn't going to die. But then the worst happens. I disconnect. The game crashes. And I couldn't figure out why. It was so frustrating to log back in and see that your character had gone to the Hall of Fallen Heroes. And it wasn't even my fault. I would have been fine with it if I'd made a mistake, or even if I'd just gotten frozen by an enemy. Because honestly, sometimes the frozen enemies are terrifying. And so that was very frustrating. But I decided, what the hell? I went ahead and made a new character, same kind, was going to build it the same way, because I really wanted to make a guide on my build. Because it was very similar to other penetrating shot builds, but there were a few aspects and a few choices that I made along the way that are kind of different. And I wanted to share that. And I wanted to get back to the point where I could do that easily without having to use like a website to show you the aspects that I used and things such as that. I wanted to go through gear piece by piece, and I wanted to kind of get a little higher up as well. Like being level 58 wasn't that high, right? So I wanted to get up into the 70s on hardcore and really share my experience. But I get my new character up to like level 17, bam, crashed again. And so I opened up my task manager and tried to figure out what was going on. And I was getting up there, man. Like, it was idling at like 85%. It would spike up to 95%. And if it hit 100, which it usually did because I was in the middle of a ton of enemies with a lot going on, my game would crash. And I didn't understand because I hadn't run into this before. Sometimes I would crash, but usually it would be in Kiovashad. I don't know why, but my friend would crash in Kiovashad too. So I just figured it was a gameplay issue. And all of a sudden I was crashing way too often, like 3 or 4 times a day. And if it happens in the middle of a fight, it just makes it so hardcore isn't viable. And that's the only way I want to play the game. So I was very sad. I tried to figure out, what's different. And I realized I watched a video by a content creator the day before. And he told me to change a couple of settings to make the FPS optimal. And I did notice a bump in like 20 FPS. So I was like, oh, nice. This is good. That'll mean that it's running better, right? If I'm getting higher FPS, that means it runs better, right? No, apparently not. So I'm here to tell you of a couple of settings that I turned on that screwed me in a very bad way. And even though it made the game run a little smoother, it made it crash. So, and keep in mind, this is probably because I'm also recording with OBS, and OBS uses a ton of resources. I looked for alternatives, but there really are none. No good ones anyway. So, if you're a streamer or a YouTuber like myself, you might find this more useful. But I would say that if these settings are making it run higher than it needs to, it's still not something that you want to do. So let's look at them real quick. You're going to want to go to your graphics settings. So go to Start, go to Graphics Settings. I'm on Windows 10. You might be on 11 and it might be a little bit different, but it's going to be relatively the same. Just look for Graphics Settings. You're going to want to turn off Hardware Accelerated GPU. This puts a lot more stress on it. And even though I don't have the setting personally, if you are on 11, Windows 11, you're going to want to go ahead and turn off Optimize for Windowed Games, because Diablo is forced into windowed. It's the only game I've ever played that is forced into windowed mode. It doesn't have a full screen mode. So this very much affects the game, and it doesn't do a very good job at it. So you're going to turn those off, and then let's go into the actual game and go to the options and go down and make sure that NVIDIA DLSS is off. Do not use it. This is the main thing. And when I turned this off, I noticed my GPU usage drop back down to around 60%, down from 85. And like I said, when it hits 100, that's when you crash, and you don't want that. I would go ahead and turn off NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency as well. Make sure that both of these are disabled, and you're going to be a happy camper. This will fix most of your issues. I also went ahead and lowered the textures from ultra to high, and you don't really notice a difference at all from what I've seen. But I did notice a good FPS boost just from that. So that'll kind of compensate for not having these two settings on. With these settings off, you should do a lot better. And I think they're normally off, so you would have had to turn them on yourself. But if you turn them on and you notice your gameplay is a little choppy sometimes you get a random crash, I would say this is why. So just sharing my experience, I am now leveling up again. I did make a mistake here, as you can see, where I look around, I'm good, but I open up my map and I die at level 40. So I think they must have spawned around me, and it was the fallen maniacs, the ones that blow up. So I really had no chance whatsoever of surviving. And then I got a little cocky and wanted to cut corners. And so at level 45, I went ahead and did the capstone dungeon and started doing nightmare dungeons. And I did a couple just fine, but the boars, oh man, the boars, they got me low. And I discovered a new issue. Now I thought this was another glitch, and I was super upset about it. But after a little testing, I figured out that it's not a glitch. I just couldn't use the hotkey because I was using my controller. So I play on controller. It's the first time I've used a controller in my entire life because I was not a console gamer. I've been a mouse and keyboard advocate forever, but in this kind of game, especially, I probably wouldn't on Path of Exile, but on this particular game, I feel like the controller is really nice, really fun. I enjoy using it. But the problem is, if you want to bind your scroll of escape to a hotkey on your keyboard, there is a moment where if you're using the controller, you cannot use the keyboard and mouse. You have to switch between them. And that takes about a half second, probably, yeah, like 500 milliseconds to switch between. And since I was giving constant input from the controller running away, it couldn't switch to the keyboard, which means I was hitting the button to teleport with my scroll of escape, and it just wouldn't work. So what you have to do is you have to let go of everything, give it no input on the controller, and then hit your keybind. So if you're playing mouse and keyboard, you won't run into this particular issue at all. You don't have to go between. But yeah, for me, that was what got me killed at 45 when I probably shouldn't have. So I'm starting the grind yet again, and I'll get back to you when I'm a little higher levels. I expect to be 50 by the end of the day. I got my new character at about 25, but yeah, I just wanted to share my experience with y'all, and thanks for watching. Until next time, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.